I hate international football, and look, this isn't me saying that I don't enjoy watching England play at major tournaments, because I do. It doesn't mean that I don't respect international football, because I do. I understand the importance of it, but I think that international football is something that isn't properly utilised in the footballing calendar more than anything else. I think any club fan finds it to be irritating. I think every club fan sort of wishes that international football didn't keep disrupting the season and the flow of it. And I think that the fact that it, ruins momentum of teams, it potentially creates injury scenarios. It isn't great for players having to jet off around the world potentially and then come back to play games. I don't think it's great for anyone, and I think there has to be a compromise, which FIFA are, I think, trying to make, but just still to me doesn't feel like enough. So I'm going to talk about in this video why I hate international football, why it's irritating to me, and why I wish they would just rejig the calendar so at least it made a little bit of sense. So I think the footballing calendar is the main issue with all of this in international football generally. And that isn't necessarily the fault of international football, but I find it incredibly irritating that we are now in October. We've only played 7 Premier League games. We've not had, a consistent run. We've played 3 games, then we've had a break. We've then played 4 games, then we've had a break. And now we've got 4 more games, then it's going to be a break. And it feels like it's stop-y-start all the time. You look at the season and you look at the games coming up and you're like, right, 4 games, then it stops. And we're not able to really get a really clear run. You aren't able to see necessarily players getting a regular run, especially if they are, not international players and they're staying at home and maybe they're on the fringes. It just feels like the international football calendar really hampers the enjoyment of watching club football. And as a Sunderland fan, I just worry every time the international break comes up. In this window itself, we've lost 2 players seemingly to injuries. Noah Siddiqui has picked up an ankle sprain, and then we've had Omar Alderete, who looks like he may have had some sort of injury. It could be cramp, it could be something else, but he went off injured anyway for Paraguay. As I record this video, I don't know what that injury is, and that was a friendly. So he's playing in a friendly game, a game that you'd argue is pointless. We don't play friendlies at club level in the middle of the season, and we certainly shouldn't. I know teams have done it at the end of seasons before, but we shouldn't be doing that. And it's so frustrating, because why is that happening? Why are Paraguay playing a friendly in October when the players that these teams belong to, are trying to fight for goals and achieve things, and there's a friendly game happening? Why is that happening? It's not like there's a tournament just around the corner. I understand friendlies if there's a World Cup happening in a week's time. Yeah, get the players playing, get them playing together, that makes sense. But this is a friendly in October. It means nothing. And I think that is the most frustrating thing for football fans. Does it have to happen? Do we have to send players? Do England have to play Wales in a friendly match? Is that something that has to happen? And I think this is why it's so frustrating as a football fan, is that these games aren't even entertaining. They're not even necessarily enjoyable. I know me, I love football, but if England are playing a friendly game, chances are, if the wife says, do you want to do something else, I'll just do something else. Like, I'm not massively bothered about England playing friendly matches. I'll check the results, but it's not like a huge deal. And I think this is the issue with international football, and this is why it's so frustrating. I think FIFA and UEFA are trying to address this. They are trying to create like sort of one big break in, I think, November next season, but I don't think that big break is like enough really to fix what the problems are. Look, they keep adding games. The Club World Cup, what a joke that is. They've added games to the Champions League with UEFA. They've added games to the Europa League. They've added in the Europa Conference League. They're constantly adding games to the calendar, and the strain of this is falling on the players. It's also given the fans maybe viewer fatigue. But I think international football is something that is maybe taking the brunt of it, because it just feels like it's excessive, the amount of games that are happening at international level. And I think certainly in this country anyway, people are more interested in the club game. They aren't massively bothered about seeing England play games when they qualify pretty easily. And look, that's just because England are good. I get that. But it's just not that, certainly not to me, and nobody I speak to who follows football is particularly interested by the international football and the break that comes with it. We'd far rather see the Premier League and the Football League keep going on and on. And I talked a little bit about the injuries, but that is the massive, for me, bone of contention with all of this, is the fact that players go away on international duty and pick up injuries, and these breaks happen so frequently that the injuries are more likely. And look, just think about it as simply as if you go on a plane ride somewhere, especially if you're traveling halfway around the world, you don't feel 100%. You have been sitting on a plane for like 8 hours, your body I'm not saying it necessarily means you're more likely to get injured, but it's certainly not a great scenario to be in. And I think that's why it's so frustrating for me, because it hampers teams, it hampers players, it changes things for football clubs. And to me, it just is absurd that football clubs are paying millions for players, and players are getting paid a lot of money to play, and then they have to go away and play these international games, and they keep going every month as it is at the moment. And the chance of them picking up injuries and whatnot is just increased by them having to do this, and that is just crazy for me. I mean, should we have international friendlies? Are international friendlies a necessity unless there's a tournament just around the corner? No, they absolutely aren't. Would it not have benefited England, say, when they played against Wales and Wales themselves, if instead of playing that friendly game, they all had like a bit more time to relax after playing, obviously busy club seasons? I would argue yes. Like that is the thing. But instead we end up playing a scenario where national teams are playing games that don't mean anything in the middle of the season. And that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I think that is a massive frustration for me. And look, it's not just a Sunderland thing. It's club fans everywhere. You see, our friends up the road, Newcastle, they signed Vissa and he gets injured in international duty. So they spend £55 million on a player, he gets injured straight away, And that happens everywhere. That happens all the time. That this happened. Martin Odegaard, I've just seen with Arsenal, he's just got injured in international duty. And look, those games, fair enough, World Cup qualifiers, that can be important. But is it necessary that they have to happen in the middle of the club season, that we have 3 of these breaks? And I think we'd all agree, certainly I imagine people watching this channel, that it is not necessary and it could be rectified in a number of ways, and one of which I'm going to go through here. So look, I think football needs to consider rewriting its calendar, and I'm not talking crazy Infantino sort of let's make the club season the summer. No, that's ridiculous. What I think needs to happen is I think pre-season needs to be cut short. Do footballers need 5 to 6 weeks of pre-season now, when we all know that they are so much fitter than in years past? I mean, if you watched like the overlap and you see Paul Scholes talk about the fact that he did nothing in the summer, the players keep themselves fit. When they come back in for pre-season training, do they still need 5 or 6 weeks? And look, I understand they have to get systems in, but the way the calendar is, that to me just feels like a way of getting players more time to recuperate after a season. So pre-season I don't think should be as long. Then start the season a little bit earlier, play more games in August. The Premier League used to have a midweek game in August, about 10 years ago. They stopped doing that for some reason, and that meant we only played 3 league games in August, and that's before all the Champions League and all that carnage happens. Why not fit more games in that month? If we came out of August playing 5 games, maybe the international break wouldn't have felt as, abrupt. But yeah, I think we need to play more midweek, early season Premier League games, especially before the Champions League starts. I know they're talking about a 3-week break in November, but I feel like just let all the club football play. We get to November, just take the month, have international month. Me as a fan, I'd probably invest in it more if England's World Cup qualifying or Euro qualifying just happened in a month and I knew what was happening. It would feel more like a club where, the manager would have like a club theme where, we'd have the training camp there. They'd go in and they'd play maybe 6 to 8 games and you'd be, busy and you'd see that the changes happen there and then. Whereas what happens with England's World Cup qualifying is they just play these sporadic games and you kind of sort of lose track of where it is. So I think give it a month. If we all knew as fans that just every year November is an international month, I think most people would forgive it. And look, I think you could play the 13, 14 games that we have scheduled from now to December in the Premier League. We could get them 14 games played by the time we hit the start of November. Then you come back from December and you just don't have any more breaks. That's it. The November month happens. You don't have any more breaks from the start of December to the end of the season. I think the season needs to end earlier. The Champions League should maybe finish the first weekend in May. We can get everything done by then, which we absolutely could do if there were no international breaks. And then the players go to international, they'll take that month of May and they'll have that as international breaks. Then in June, they would go and have a month off. And then in the World Cup years, you just flip that so that in May, they would have that time off to lead into the World Cup in June, or you just play the World Cup in May, whatever it is you decide to do. But I think that right now, having these 2-week breaks, or even potentially a 3-week break next season, it is so disruptive for the season and doesn't give fans really what they want. I do think that having an international month or 2 international months in a season is a far better way of doing it than having constant breaks throughout the season. And as a Sunderland fan, if we were to lose Noah Siddiqui and Omar Alderete to injuries on international duty, you just feel so frustrated by it because they are two imperative players. And there'll be other clubs in the Premier League that feel exactly the same way now. And every club looks at the international break and goes, I just hope everyone comes back 100% fit. And that is frustrating and it's exasperating for us fans. And look, I know that other people in countries, maybe be people watching this video who disagree with this and think that international football is brilliant. But I think that we have to look at it from the perspective of club fans as well, and I feel like they get left out a lot in this, and that international football, for whatever reason, takes precedence over club football. And I don't think that should necessarily be the case. But anyway, let me know what you think about international football in the comments below, because I don't know if my opinion is the correct one. Maybe I'm just not that interested in watching England in international football generally, which is why my view is this. But I just feel so frustrated when I sit in the international break, A, without games to watch at the weekend, but B, seeing players potentially getting injured who, are playing pointless friendlies in South America. That is so frustrating. It's exasperating. And it's just annoying that, you come back and now the game that you have coming at the weekend, you've got issues around players getting back. When are they back? Are they going to be fit? And with the Premier League and the operation that it is, that just seems absolutely ludicrous. So yeah, let me know below what you think of this. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this. Please like the video as well. And we'll catch you for another one, probably to preview the Wolves game, maybe tomorrow or Thursday. So thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you soon.